First question is, the new 5th district has a distinctly rural-urban split. How do you plan to represent both of those very different constituencies in Congress?
Well, thank you again for having me. Yeah, this is somewhat of an easy topic for me because the issues are the same. But if you know, I don't know if you know, I was mayor of Happy Valley outside of the metro area, but kind of in a suburban area that was once rural. And as mayor for 8 years and city council prior to that, you learn to represent everybody in the district. So it's about opening our ears, making sure that we're paying attention to what's on the ground, what people are talking about. And yes, Oregon's 5th district is newly redrawn, but the issues are the same across the district. We're finding that people want, prosperity and economic growth and keeping taxes low, but we have a lot of agriculture. So people are concerned with water. People are concerned with energy costs. The price of gas, I just filled up today, $5.25 a gallon. And so it's expensive here in Oregon. So these issues are the same. I just know that I'll keep doing what I've always done as mayor, bringing everybody to the table, listening throughout the district and making sure we answer the problems that they're talking about.
Should the House of Representatives formally investigate allegations of voter irregularities in 2020? Why or why not?
Well, President Biden is the president, of course, and I know that there was also kinds of conversation about the election. We're moving forward in this. We want to make sure that people have free and fair elections. This is something that, we don't often hear on the trail very often, but, in Oregon, it's mail by ballot. We want to make sure that every vote is counted and that everybody has a right to vote. And that's all I'm concerned with. And definitely want to see us go back to, the transition of power is peaceful. We didn't see it in 16. We didn't really see it in 20. And I certainly would like to get back to that.
What should be done at the congressional level to address the causes of homelessness and address the needs of the people living in our streets, our parks, our national forests at the congressional level?
Oh, for sure. And we're seeing that on the ground here in Oregon. It's been a conversation as when I was mayor, I hear it through this, the state level. I know our governor's race it's a conversation because we see it with our own eyes. And at the congressional level, what we can do is make sure that there is funding for all things that we need to address that contribute to the homelessness crisis. We're seeing drug addiction in the state of Oregon. It's rampant, right? We're number 50 in drug addiction, and we're only number 1 in drug addiction, only 50 in drug treatment. So that's one issue that we have to make sure. Also, the mental health crisis that we're seeing, we have to make sure that the funds get to the cities to help out with that. We also have to talk about funding our police. I mean, this is just one of the reasons to help out in that situation. And we're seeing, a lot of criminal activity associated with the homelessness crisis, as well as the mental health and drug addiction. And I want to make sure, as I did as mayor, to fully fund our public safety officers for the tools, the accessories, everything that they need, and we're losing a lot of officers, public safety officers right here in Portland because of the rampant crime. So there's a lot we can do from a congressional level. But one of those is going to make sure that the funds flow to these cities to help out with that situation.
Does Congress need to work on stricter gun control legislation?
Well, in Oregon, we have some of the strictest gun laws in the country. Right here in Oregon, we have to, background checks are required. Anytime you have to purchase a sidearm, you definitely have to fill out the proper paperwork in order to make sure that you have no past history of any criminality, as well as any domestic abuse. So we have some of the strictest gun laws in the country. I know Congress just passed another sweeping bill on guns. I would imagine that we shouldn't hear that again, but in Oregon, we have some of the strictest gun laws, and we want to make sure that we're addressing the public safety aspect, keeping guns out of the hands of criminals for sure, enforcing the laws that make sense to us, and also while protecting Americans' Second Amendment.
Can you give us 2 issues which you think you could realistically work with Democrats across the aisle to affect change on? 2 issues.
Oh gosh, I think that's the most important thing that Americans and Oregonians have forgotten. It's how to talk to each other and make sure that we do work across the aisle. Education is one of those. I mean, that is the education that we saw and the lack of education that we saw over the last 2 years in regards to the pandemic has really affected our young people. I would imagine that Republicans, Democrats, independents, and non-affiliateds care about this issue. I want to make sure that parents are always involved, and it really did not look to party line when we saw the full effects. And now we're going to be dealing with, how far behind our kids are, as well as addressing that mental health crisis that we're seeing amongst young people. They're not speaking, they're not talking. We've visited with a couple of speech pathologists and mental health counselors that are saying they're seeing the full effects of that lockdown. I'd like to make sure that we bring all parents on board to address the issue of education in order to not only fulfill our workforce, but to have healthy young individuals. I did it as mayor, made sure to have a Happy Valley Youth Council, and I want to continue down that road of remembering who our future is and what we're really fighting for. Maybe the other issue I would like to talk about is public safety. Again, you mentioned too, public safety is important to all. It's important to our businesses. It's important to our communities. It's important to our young people and students walking to schools. So again, this all it runs across all party lines. Public safety is the one thing that people expect for paying their tax dollar, and we have to make sure that we can be transparent with that and honor their public safety. I mean, for businesses and community members as a whole, it was important to me as mayor, and it will continue to be important to me as your next congresswoman.
Should Congress work to remove marijuana from the list of Schedule I narcotics and to broaden the legalization of marijuana at the federal level?
In Oregon, that was passed just several years ago. We're seeing that across many different states. This conversation is going to be had, I believe, at the congressional level. What that looks like, I wouldn't be able to exactly pinpoint whether that will move through, but I do know there's some issues on banking. There's issues as it's an agricultural aspect to it, and it's a legitimate business in some states, and I think that conversation is going to be had as far as moving that across the country. What that looks like, I'm not exactly sure, but we're going to learn from our mistakes, do better as we move forward, but I would imagine we're going to hear more of this.
Should the work of the House Select Committee investigating the attack on the Capitol on January 6th continue beyond the current congressional session?
Oh my gosh. Well, what happened on January 6th was tragic in the sense of we should never storm the Capitol. Again, as mayor of Happy Valley, I would not have wanted to see that happen at Happy Valley City Hall. I didn't want to see it downtown Portland like it did for the last few years where they were burning down federal buildings and some of our police precincts. I mean, it's just not how Americans should act. And we have to make sure we hold people accountable. As it moves forward, I believe I haven't really, to be honest, seen what the dates are, that if it's finishing up, I know they're hearing final testimony. How that moves forward, we will see.
So let me take another run at this. Should the work of that committee continue beyond the current congressional session?
Well, I'm not sure the committee will be the same. We're going to have the changeover in election, and we'll move forward from there. Again, they should finish the work that they've, I guess, set out to do. But we should hold people accountable for the acts that were done. The committee will change or not change. I believe they're finishing it out now. So whether or not it continues, I don't know.
Should access to abortion services be decided exclusively at the state level, or do we need more definitive federal law in that issue?
Well, the Dobbs case brought that back to the states, and that's where it should be. I mean, this is a state issue. In Oregon, that is codified in law, the access to abortion. And now it'll be up to Oregonians in the future of where they want that to be. Again, it should be a states' rights issue, and that's where it should be. I don't want to see it on the floor of Congress.